The galaxy was full of dangerous places. Dead planets floated through empty space. Broken alien ships drifted silently near black holes. Ancient battlefields still burned after thousands of years. But nothing was feared more than the Dark Zone. Even the bravest alien captains avoided it. No trade ships traveled near it. No military fleet entered it. No explorer returned from it. The Dark Zone was a massive area of darkness near the edge of the galaxy. No stars shined inside it. No signals escaped from it. Every scanner stopped working near its borders. For over 3,000 years, the Dark Zone remained a mystery. Some aliens believed giant monsters lived there. Others believed space itself was broken inside the zone. Many thought an ancient evil was sleeping in the darkness. Nobody truly knew the answer, because nobody survived long enough to tell the story. Inside the Galactic Council station, hundreds of alien leaders gathered for an emergency meeting. The giant chamber was filled with fear. Blue holograms showed missing fleets and destroyed ships near the Dark Zone. A tall alien commander stepped forward slowly. "The zone is growing," he said quietly. 3 more patrol fleets disappeared this month. The room became silent. Another alien leader looked terrified. "We must seal that region permanently," she said. "No ship should ever go near it again." Then a human voice suddenly interrupted the meeting. "What if somebody goes inside?" Every alien in the chamber turned toward the humans. 3 human officers stood near the back of the room wearing dark exploration uniforms. At the center stood Captain Elias Ward. Unlike the frightened aliens around him, Elias looked calm. The alien commander narrowed his glowing eyes. "You humans do not understand the danger," he warned. "No species survives the Dark Zone." Elias crossed his arms. "Then maybe nobody explored it properly," he replied. Whispers spread across the chamber instantly. Some aliens looked shocked. Others laughed quietly. Humans were still new to the galaxy, compared to older alien civilizations. Humanity was considered young and reckless. An insect-like alien began clicking its sharp claws together. "You are primitive," it said coldly. "The Dark Zone destroys entire civilizations." Elias did not react. "Maybe," he answered. "But humans are good at surviving impossible things." The chamber became silent again. Hours later, despite endless warnings, humanity officially accepted the exploration mission. The alien leaders believed the humans were committing suicide. 2 days later, the human exploration ship Vanguard prepared to leave. The ship was small compared to giant alien warships, but it carried some of humanity's best explorers. Scientists and soldiers inside the command room. Crew members checked equipment nervously. Lieutenant Sarah Kane looked at the black image on the main screen. The Dark Zone looked wrong, even from far away. The darkness felt unnatural, like space itself had been erased. "You really think we can survive this?" one engineer asked quietly. Captain Elias looked toward the dark void ahead. "We survive," he said calmly. "That's what humans do." The ship slowly moved forward. As the Vanguard approached the zone, warning alarms suddenly appeared across every screen. "Scanner failure," the pilot reported. "Navigation systems unstable." Then the stars disappeared. The moment the ship crossed into the Dark Zone, everything changed outside the windows. There was only darkness, no planets, no stars, nothing. The crew became uneasy immediately. Even sound inside the ship felt strange. The halls seemed quieter than before. The air felt heavier. Then the lights flickered. "Backup systems online," Sarah reported quickly. A loud metal noise echoed somewhere deep inside the ship. Every crew member froze. "That came from cargo level 3, a soldier whispered. Security teams moved through the dark hallway carefully. Their flashlights barely worked inside the strange darkness. Then they found something impossible. A large door had been bent outward from the inside. Not broken inward, outward, as if something escaped. Fear slowly spread across the crew. Hours later, The Vanguard discovered something floating inside the darkness. At first the crew thought it was a planet. But it was not a planet, it was a giant structure. An ancient black city floating silently in space. The structure was massive beyond imagination. Thousands of towers stretched into darkness like giant claws. "No life signs," Sarah whispered. Captain Elias stared at the dead city carefully. Then the ship sensors suddenly detected movement. Everybody turned toward the screen instantly. Something huge moved slowly between the towers. For only a second, then it vanished. The crew became completely silent. Before anybody could speak again, the lights suddenly shut off across the ship. Darkness filled every hallway. Then a voice echoed softly through the communication system. A voice that did not belong to anyone on the ship. "Leave before it sees you." And somewhere deep outside the ship, something enormous opened its eyes. The Vanguard drifted silently beside the ancient black city. Inside the ship nobody moved, nobody even breathed loudly. The strange voice still echoed through the communication system. "Leave before it sees you." Lieutenant Sarah Kane quickly checked the audio controls again. "That signal did not come from our crew," she whispered. Captain Elias stared at the dark screen carefully. "Can you trace it?" he asked. Sarah shook her head slowly. "It came from outside the ship." The command room became silent again. Outside the windows, the giant black city floated motionless in the endless darkness. Its towers looked like giant shadows reaching into space. Then suddenly, one of the towers lit up. A dim red light appeared near the top. Then another, and another within seconds. Hundreds of red lights glowed across the dead city. The crew members stepped backward nervously. "It knows we are here," one soldier whispered. At that exact moment, the ship alarms exploded loudly. "Movement detected." The pilot shouted. Every scanner screen turned red instantly. Something massive was moving under the ship, not beside it, not behind it, under it. The entire Vanguard began shaking violently. Metal pipes burst inside the walls. Lights flickered wildly across the halls. Then the ship suddenly stopped moving. The engines were still active. But the Vanguard refused to move forward. "It's pulling us," the engineer yelled. "Something is holding the ship." Fear spread through the crew instantly. Captain Elias grabbed the nearest control screen. "All power to engines," he ordered. The engines roared loudly, but the ship barely moved. Then the darkness below the ship slowly changed shape. At first it looked like smoke. But it was not smoke, it was something alive. A gigantic black creature slowly appeared beneath the Vanguard. Its body was larger than entire cities. Long shadow-like arms moved around the ship silently. The worst part was its face, or what looked like a face. Two enormous glowing red eyes opened in the darkness. Several crew members froze in pure terror. One scientist collapsed onto the floor shaking. "That thing is impossible," he whispered. Suddenly every screen inside the ship filled with strange symbols. Nobody understood the language. Then a deep sound echoed through the ship. Not through speakers, through their minds. "You should not be here." Crew members grabbed their heads in pain. Blood ran from one soldier's nose. Captain Elias forced himself toward the controls. "Prepare emergency jump," he ordered, "but navigation is dead." Sarah shouted. "We jumped blind," Elias answered. The giant creature slowly moved closer to the ship. Its red eyes grew brighter, almost like it was studying the humans. Then something strange happened. The creature stopped. The glowing eyes focused directly on Captain Elias. For one long second, everything became silent. Then the creature suddenly released the ship. "Now!" Elias shouted. The pilot activated the emergency engines instantly. The Vanguard exploded forward into darkness. The entire ship shook violently as alarms screamed everywhere. Nobody knew where they were going. They only wanted to escape behind them. The ancient city slowly disappeared into darkness again. But before the jump completed, Sarah looked at the rear scanner one final time and her blood turned cold. Something was following them, hours later. The Vanguard finally escaped the dark zone. Stars appeared outside the windows once again. Normal space had returned, but the crew did not celebrate. Half the ship was damaged, several systems were destroyed completely. And one crew member was missing. Security teams searched every hallway. But the missing soldier had vanished without a trace. The surviving crew members looked exhausted and terrified. Nobody spoke much during the return journey. Some claimed they still heard whispers inside the walls. Others refused to sleep at all. Captain Elias remained inside the command room for most of the trip. He kept thinking about the giant creature. It could have destroyed the ship easily. But it did not, almost like it wanted the humans alive. 3 days later, the Vanguard finally arrived near the Galactic Council station. Hundreds of alien ships surrounded the station immediately. News of humanity's survival spread across the galaxy within minutes. Alien leaders could not believe it. For the first time in history, someone had entered the dark zone and returned alive. As the damaged human ship slowly approached the station, thousands of aliens watched nervously from observation windows. The Vanguard looked terrible. Its metal hull was covered with strange black marks. Parts of the ship looked burned by something unnatural. Then suddenly, every scanner around the station shut down at once. Warning alarms filled the massive station instantly. What is happening? An alien commander shouted. No signal response. An officer yelled back. All systems are failing. Panic spread rapidly across the station. Fear spread across the galaxy after the return of the Vanguard. Alien news stations repeated the same message every hour. Something followed the humans out of the dark zone. Trade routes near the zone were abandoned immediately. Military fleets moved away from the region. Entire colonies evacuated nearby star systems. Inside the Galactic Council station, emergency meetings continued day and night. Many alien leaders blamed humanity for awakening whatever lived inside the darkness. Others believed the humans had brought back a curse. But Captain Elias Ward ignored the fear around him, because he knew something worse. The giant creature had let them escape on purpose, inside a secured meeting room. Elias stood beside a hologram of the ancient Black City. The massive structure rotated slowly above the table. Thousands of towers stretched across its surface like sharp black teeth. "We need to go back," Elias said calmly. The room exploded with angry voices instantly. "Absolutely not," one alien commander shouted. "You already endangered the entire galaxy," another yelled. An older alien scientist stepped forward nervously. "That city should not exist," she whispered. "Our oldest records describe similar structures before entire civilizations disappeared." Elias looked toward her carefully. "You know something about that place," he said. The scientist hesitated for several seconds. Then she finally spoke. "Long ago, an ancient species entered the dark zone searching for knowledge," she explained quietly. "They were the most advanced civilization in galactic history. What happened to them?" Sarah asked. The scientist looked frightened. "Nothing survived." Silence filled the room again. Despite the warnings, humanity made its decision. A second mission would enter the dark zone. This time with a larger fleet, better weapons and stronger ships. No alien race agreed to join them. The humans would go alone. 7 days later, 3 human ships moved toward the dark zone once again. The lead ship was the Odyssey, humanity's newest exploration cruiser, unlike the smaller Vanguard. The Odyssey carried heavy weapons and advanced scanners. But as the fleet approached the darkness, every crew member felt the same fear returning. The stars slowly disappeared ahead of them, like the universe itself was fading away inside the command room. Sarah studied the scanners carefully. "No signals," she reported. "No life signs." Captain Elias stared into the darkness ahead. "Take us in," he ordered. The fleet crossed the border together. Immediately, every screen flickered violently. The same unnatural silence returned. Even experienced soldiers looked uncomfortable. One crew member whispered softly, "It feels alive in here." Hours passed slowly inside the darkness. Then the scanners suddenly detected something enormous ahead. The ancient city had returned, but this time the humans saw its true size. The structure was far bigger than before. Entire planets could fit inside it. Thousands of giant towers stretched endlessly across the darkness. Some towers were broken, others glowed faintly with red light. "It's not a city," Sarah whispered. "It's a machine." The human ships moved carefully between the massive structures. As they entered deeper into the city, strange things began happening. Time itself felt wrong. Clocks stopped working. Voices echoed strangely through the halls. Crew members saw shadows moving where nobody stood. Then one soldier screamed over the communication channel, "I saw someone outside the ship." "That's impossible," another crew member replied quickly. But security cameras suddenly showed a human figure standing on one of the towers outside. Captain Elias froze when he saw the image. The figure was wearing a Vanguard exploration suit. It was the missing crew member from the first mission, Officer Daniel Reese, but that was impossible. Daniel disappeared weeks ago. A rescue team immediately entered the city. The giant black halls inside the structure looked ancient and empty. Massive symbols covered the walls. And the air felt strangely cold. Then they found him. Daniel stood alone inside a giant chamber. His uniform was damaged badly. His face looked pale, but he was alive, Daniel. Sarah whispered carefully, slowly. The missing officer turned toward them. Something about him felt wrong immediately. His eyes looked darker than before, and he smiled strangely. "You should not have come back," he said softly. The rescue team aimed weapons nervously. "What happened to you?" Elias asked. Daniel looked toward the darkness above the chamber. "It watches everything now," he whispered. Suddenly the giant walls around them began shaking. Deep sounds echoed through the ancient structure. Then red lights slowly activated across the chamber, one by one. Giant machines hidden beneath the city started waking up. The floor vibrated violently beneath their feet. Sarah looked at the scanner device in horror. "Something massive is moving below us," she said. Before anyone could react, Daniel grabbed Captain Elias suddenly. His dark eyes widened with fear. "You need to leave now," he shouted. Then the entire chamber split open beneath them. Far below the city, deep inside the darkness, a gigantic creature slowly opened its eyes, and this time it was awake. The black crack in space continued growing larger. At first it looked small compared to the giant city, but within minutes, it expanded across the darkness like a wound tearing through reality itself. Even the watchers became still, their glowing white eyes focused on the crack silently, almost like ancient soldiers seeing an old nightmare return. Inside the human fleet, fear spread quickly. Nobody had ever seen space behave like this before. Stars near the crack slowly disappeared. Light itself bent unnaturally around the opening, and strange whispers echoed through every communication system. Some crew members covered their ears in panic. Others stared at the darkness without blinking. Lieutenant Sarah looked at her scanner in horror. "It's not just a portal," she whispered. "It's alive." Then something moved inside the crack. A giant shape slowly pushed itself forward from the darkness beyond. At first the humans could not understand what they were seeing. The creature had no clear form. Its body changed constantly like living shadows twisting together. Thousands of glowing eyes opened across its surface, each eye staring in different directions at the same time. One human scientist screamed immediately. The creature noticed him instantly. Then the scientist suddenly disappeared. No sound, no blood, nothing. 1 second he existed, the next second he was gone. Panic exploded inside the fleet. What did that thing do? A soldier shouted. Nobody answered, because nobody knew. The deep voice of the Watcher echoed across the city again. The Devourer has returned. Then the giant Watchers attacked. Massive beams of white energy fired across the darkness, striking the shadow creature directly. The entire dark zone shook violently for a moment. The humans believed the ancient guardians might actually destroy it, but then the creature smiled. At least that was the closest thing the human mind could understand. A giant shape opened across its body like a mouth, and the Watcher's energy simply vanished inside it, consumed instantly. The creature grew even larger, then it attacked. Long black tendrils exploded from the darkness, moving faster than human eyes could follow. One Watcher was struck directly through its massive chest. The ancient guardian let out a deep sound like a dying star. Then its giant body shattered into pieces across space. The humans watched in complete shock. A being powerful enough to survive millions of years had been destroyed in seconds. "Retreat!" Captain Elias ordered immediately. The human fleet turned away from the city as fast as possible. Behind them, the Watchers continued fighting desperately. Massive explosions lit the darkness. Ancient weapons fired endlessly across space. Entire sections of the Black City collapsed during the battle, but the Devourer kept moving forward. Like nothing could stop it, inside the Odyssey. Fear infected the crew rapidly. Some soldiers claimed they could hear voices inside their heads. Others began seeing shadows moving through the hallways. Then the death started. A crew member disappeared from a locked room. Another was found staring silently at a wall with black eyes. One engineer suddenly attacked his own team while screaming about the eyes in the dark. The ship itself felt cursed. Sarah rushed into the command room holding a datapad tightly. "Captain, you need to see this," she said nervously. Elias looked at the recordings immediately. Security cameras showed something impossible. A black shape moving silently through the ship walls. Not walking, not crawling, flowing like living smoke. And every time the shape passed near someone, they disappeared minutes later. "We brought one of them back with us," Sarah whispered. The command room became silent. Suddenly all lights inside the Odyssey shut off at once. Darkness filled the ship instantly. Then the whispers returned, soft. Cold voices speaking from everywhere at once. "We see you." Several crew members began screaming in terror. Emergency lights finally activated seconds later. But one person was missing, Lieutenant Sarah Kane. Captain Elias searched the dark hallways with armed soldiers. The deeper they moved into the ship, the colder the air became. Then they found strange black marks spreading across the walls like veins. The marks pulsed slowly, almost alive. One soldier pointed toward the cargo bay ahead. The giant metal doors were open, inside the dark room. Sarah stood completely still near the center. Her back faced the team. "Sarah?" Elias called carefully. She did not answer. Then she slowly turned around. Her eyes were completely black, and behind her, something enormous moved inside the shadows of the cargo bay. A shape too large to fit inside the room, too dark to fully see. The whispers suddenly became louder. Then Sarah smiled. The black crack in space continued growing larger. At first it looked small compared to the giant city, but within minutes, it expanded across the darkness like a wound tearing through reality itself. Even the Watchers became still, their glowing white eyes focused on the crack silently. Almost like ancient soldiers seeing an old nightmare return. Inside the human fleet, fear spread quickly. Nobody had ever seen space behave like this before. Stars near the crack slowly disappeared. Light itself bent unnaturally around the opening. And strange whispers echoed through every communication system. Some crew members covered their ears in panic. Others stared at the darkness without blinking. Lieutenant Sarah looked at her scanner in horror. "It's not just a portal," she whispered. "It's alive." Then something moved inside the crack. A giant shape slowly pushed itself forward from the darkness beyond. At first the humans could not understand what they were seeing. The creature had no clear form. Its body changed constantly, like living shadows twisting together. Thousands of glowing eyes opened across its surface, each eye staring in different directions at the same time. One human scientist screamed immediately. The creature noticed him instantly. Then the scientist suddenly disappeared. No sound, no blood, nothing. 1 second he existed, the next second he was gone. Panic exploded inside the fleet. What did that thing do? A soldier shouted. Nobody answered, because nobody knew. The deep voice of the Watcher echoed across the city again. The Devourer has returned. Then the giant Watchers attacked. Massive beams of white energy fired across the darkness, striking the shadow creature directly. The entire dark zone shook violently for a moment. The humans believed the ancient guardians might actually destroy it, but then the creature smiled. At least that was the closest thing the human mind could understand. A giant shape opened across its body like a mouth, and the Watcher's energy simply vanished inside it, consumed instantly. The creature grew even larger. Then it attacked. Long black tendrils exploded from the darkness, moving faster than human eyes could follow. One Watcher was struck directly through its massive chest. The ancient guardian let out a deep sound like a dying star. Then its giant body shattered into pieces across space. The humans watched in complete shock. A being powerful enough to survive millions of years had been destroyed in seconds. Retreat! Captain Elias ordered immediately. The human fleet turned away from the city as fast as possible. Behind them, the Watchers continued fighting desperately. Massive explosions lit the darkness. Ancient weapons fired endlessly across space. Entire sections of the Black City collapsed during the battle, but the Devourer kept moving forward. Like nothing could stop it, inside the Odyssey. Fear infected the crew rapidly. Some soldiers claimed they could hear voices inside their heads. Others began seeing shadows moving through the hallways. Then the death started. A crew member disappeared from a locked room. Another was found staring silently at a wall with black eyes. One engineer suddenly attacked his own team while screaming about the eyes in the dark. The ship itself felt cursed. Sarah rushed into the command room holding a datapad tightly. "Captain, you need to see this," she said nervously. Elias looked at the recordings immediately. Security cameras showed something impossible. A black shape moving silently through the ship walls. Not walking, not crawling, flowing like living smoke. And every time the shape passed near someone, they disappeared minutes later. "We brought one of them back with us," Sarah whispered. The command room became silent. Suddenly all lights inside the Odyssey shut off at once. Darkness filled the ship instantly. Then the whispers returned, soft. Cold voices speaking from everywhere at once. "We see you." Several crew members began screaming in terror. Emergency lights finally activated seconds later. But one person was missing, Lieutenant Sarah Kane. Captain Elias searched the dark hallways with armed soldiers. The deeper they moved into the ship, the colder the air became. Then they found strange black marks spreading across the walls like veins. The marks pulsed slowly, almost alive. One soldier pointed toward the cargo bay ahead. The giant metal doors were open, inside the dark room. Sarah stood completely still near the center. Her back faced the team. "Sarah?" Elias called carefully. She did not answer. Then she slowly turned around. Her eyes were completely black, and behind her, something enormous moved inside the shadows of the cargo bay. A shape too large to fit inside the room. Too dark to fully see. The whispers suddenly became louder. Then Sarah smiled unnaturally and spoke with a voice that was no longer human. "The galaxy will finally be consumed." The cargo bay became completely silent. Captain Elias stared at Sarah in shock, while armed soldiers slowly stepped backward in fear. Her black eyes reflected the emergency lights strangely. Like darkness itself was alive inside her body, behind her. The giant shadow moved slowly across the walls. Not even the ship seemed real anymore. The metal floor twisted unnaturally, the air felt heavy and cold. And the whispers inside the ship kept growing louder. "The galaxy will finally be consumed," Sarah repeated softly. But the voice was not hers. It sounded deeper, older. Like many voices speaking together at once, one frightened soldier raised his weapon immediately. "Captain, give the order," he whispered nervously. Elias did not move. Sarah had saved his life too many times. He refused to believe she was truly gone. Slowly, he stepped closer to her. "Fight it," he said calmly. "You're stronger than this." For 1 second, Sarah's expression changed. Pain appeared in her eyes, almost like she could still hear him somewhere inside the darkness controlling her. Then the entire ship shook violently. Warning alarms exploded across every hallway. "Captain!" The pilot shouted through comms, "Something is happening outside." The giant shadow behind Sarah suddenly disappeared into the darkness. At the same moment, Sarah collapsed onto the floor unconscious. Elias caught her before she hit the ground. Her eyes slowly returned to normal. But her skin felt freezing cold, outside the Odyssey. The battle near the ancient city had become far worse. The Watchers were losing. Massive black creatures poured from the giant crack in space endlessly, destroying ancient defenses one by one. Entire sections of the Dark Zone burned with white explosions. But the Devourers continued spreading deeper into the galaxy. Then something impossible appeared on the scanners. A signal human, coming from deep inside the Dark Zone. Sarah slowly regained consciousness inside the medical bay. "The whispers," she whispered weakly. "They are inside everything." Elias stood beside her carefully. "What happened to you?" he asked. Sarah looked terrified. "It touched my mind," she answered quietly. "It showed me things." "What things?" Sarah's hands trembled slightly. "Earth," she whispered. "Not our Earth. An older Earth." Elias frowned immediately. "That makes no sense." But Sarah continued speaking. "I saw humans inside the Dark Zone," she said. "Millions of years ago." The room became silent. "That's impossible," Elias replied, before Sarah could answer. Another officer rushed into the medical bay. "Captain, you need to see this now." Minutes later, Elias entered the command room again. A giant hologram floated above the center table. The ancient signal had finally been decoded, but nobody inside the room looked relieved. They looked terrified. "Play it," Elias ordered quietly. The hologram activated immediately. An old human face appeared on the screen. The man wore strange black armor, unlike anything humanity had ever created. Behind him, giant stars burned inside darkness. Then the recording began. "If you are seeing this," the man said calmly, "then the prison has failed." Every crew member stared in silence. "My name is Commander Adrien Vale," the man continued, "and I was born before your civilization existed." Shock spread across the room instantly. The recording showed giant human fleets fighting impossible shadow creatures near the Dark Zone. Entire galaxies burned during the Ancient War. "We created the Watchers," Adrien explained. "We built the prison." Sarah looked pale immediately. "No," she whispered. The ancient human continued speaking. "The Devourers cannot be destroyed," he said. "They feed on fear, memory, and consciousness itself." The hologram suddenly changed again, this time showing Earth, but not modern Earth. An ancient version covered with massive cities and giant machines. "Humanity was once the oldest civilization in existence," Adrien said. "But after the war, we erased our own history to protect the future." Captain Elias felt cold disbelief spreading through his chest. Everything humanity believed about itself was wrong. Humans were not a young species. They were survivors of an ancient forgotten empire. The recording continued. "We hid Earth," Adrien explained. And we scattered humanity across time to escape extinction. Then his expression became darker. But the Devourers fear one thing, he said quietly. They fear human minds. The crew looked confused immediately. Adrien finally revealed the truth. Human consciousness resists their control, he explained. That is why the Watchers allowed humanity to survive. Suddenly the recording began breaking apart with static. Warning symbols flashed across the hologram. They are coming, Adrien said urgently. If the prison opens completely, the galaxy will fall. The signal ended instantly. Silence filled the command room. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then the entire ship suddenly lost power again. Darkness covered every hallway and far outside the Odyssey. Deep inside the growing black crack in space, a colossal shape slowly emerged from the darkness. Bigger than moons, bigger than cities, and this time, darkness spread across space like a living storm. The giant crack inside the dark zone had grown larger than entire star systems. Black energy flowed from it endlessly. And everywhere the darkness touched, stars slowly died. The ancient Watchers retreated for the first time in millions of years. Even they feared what was coming out of the gate. Inside the Odyssey, silence filled the command room. Captain Elias stared at the massive shadow on the main screen. The creature was impossible to understand completely. Its shape constantly changed between smoke, metal, and darkness. Thousands of glowing eyes opened and closed across its endless body. And every second it moved closer to the galaxy. Alien fleets across nearby systems were already falling back. Entire planets began emergency evacuations. Fear spread faster than war itself. But Elias finally understood the truth. Running would not save anyone. Humanity had faced this horror once before, and now humanity would face it again. Lieutenant Sarah entered the command room slowly. Her face still looked pale after the creature touched her mind. But her eyes were focused again. The Watchers sent us coordinates, she said quietly. Elias looked at her immediately. Coordinates for what? Sarah activated the hologram table. A giant structure appeared deep inside the center of the dark zone. At first it looked like another city. Then the crew realized what they were seeing. It was a weapon. An ancient human machine hidden inside the darkness for millions of years. The Heart of Soul, Sarah whispered. Adrien Vale built it during the First War. One officer looked confused. What does it do? Sarah hesitated for a moment. It closes the gate forever, she answered softly. The room became silent. Then she spoke the final part. But someone has to activate it manually from inside. Everyone immediately understood what that meant. It was a suicide mission outside the ship. The battle near the dark zone grew worse every minute. The Devourers poured into the galaxy endlessly, destroying fleets with terrifying speed. Alien warships exploded like dust near the massive creatures. Entire stations disappeared into darkness without leaving debris behind. Then Earth joined the battle. Thousands of human ships arrived from hyperspace together, forming giant defense lines near the dark zone. For the first time in galactic history, alien races and humans fought side by side. No one cared about old hatred anymore, because extinction was now standing in front of them. Captain Elias looked across the fleet calmly. This is where humanity stands, he said quietly. The human fleet charged forward immediately. Massive railguns fired across space. Missiles burned through the darkness. Fighter ships exploded between giant shadow creatures. The galaxy itself seemed to shake during the battle meanwhile. The Odyssey moved deeper into the dark zone toward the hidden weapon. Inside the ancient black storm, strange whispers attacked the crew constantly. Some soldiers saw visions of dead family members. Others heard voices begging them to stop. The Devourers were trying to break their minds, but humans kept moving forward. Finally, the Odyssey reached the Heart of Soul. The giant machine floated silently inside the center of the darkness, covered with ancient human symbols glowing faintly in white light. Captain Elias prepared himself quietly. Sarah stepped in front of him suddenly. "You can't do this alone," she said. Elias smiled weakly. "If I don't, nobody survives." For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Sarah handed him a small metal object, an old human symbol from Earth. "Bring the light back," she whispered. Elias nodded once. Then he entered the ancient machine alone, deep inside the heart of Sol. The walls glowed with forgotten human technology. Massive energy flowed through endless halls of white metal. At the center waited one final person, Commander Adrien Vale. Still alive after millions of years. His body looked old and weak, but his eyes remained calm. "You came," Adrien said quietly. Elias looked shocked. "You're real," he whispered. Adrien smiled sadly. "We failed once," he answered. "You must not fail again, outside the machine." The Devourers finally reached the heart of Sol. The giant shadow creatures surrounded the structure from every direction. The galaxy's final defense line collapsed behind them. Time was running out. Adrien slowly activated the ancient controls. "The weapon needs a human mind to complete the process," he explained. Elias understood immediately. One human consciousness had to remain connected to the machine forever. Adrien placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. "Humanity survived because we never stopped fighting the darkness," he said softly. Then the old commander stepped toward the core alone, before Elias could stop him. The ancient human connected himself to the machine. White light exploded across the dark zone instantly. The heart of Sol activated. The massive crack in space began closing slowly. The Devourers screamed across the galaxy as the light consumed them. Shadow creatures dissolved into ash inside the burning white storm. Then the gate finally collapsed forever. Silence returned to space once again, days later. The surviving fleets gathered near Earth. The galaxy had survived. Billions were dead. Entire worlds were destroyed. But life continued, and humanity became legend. Across alien worlds, children heard stories about the species that entered the dark zone and saved the galaxy. But Captain Elias often looked toward the stars quietly. Because before the gate closed completely, he saw one final thing inside the darkness. A single glowing red eye, still watching.